through the air as well.
Okay.
So he's already, with 7 more games left, at 1,137 yards, 10 touchdowns, and another 210 through the air. He also has 9 touches, which have ended at the 1-yard line, the most in football. The subsequent plays: Hurts touchdown, Hurts touchdown, Hurts touchdown, Hurts touchdown, Hurts touchdown. Saquon rush, lost yardage. Hurts pass touchdown. Hurts rush, he fumbled. And Hurts touchdown.
Wow.
That's insane.
That hurts. Yeah.
Thanks to Ben Solak for that stat, joining us right now. He always gets the touchdowns. The one, the only, from CBS Sports, David Richard. Good morning, Dave.
Dave, Jason, how are you? What a great and also miserable stat for Saquon Barkley. And this is like, that was the one thing that everybody was worried about with Saquon when he went to Philadelphia as a free agent, that he would just get so many touchdown opportunities taken away at the goal line. And I remember thinking at the time, there's no way that Philadelphia is going to take them all away. Sure, they're going to take some, but they've kind of done it. And yet, he's still one of the very best fantasy football running backs you could ask for.
Is he the number 1 pick if we redraft today?
He probably is. You can make the case for Derrick Henry. You can make the case, honestly, if it's rest of season, you can make the case for Christian McCaffrey. But it would probably be those 3 guys and Bijan Robinson in the hopper for the 101.
Because if I remember right, we didn't know about McCaffrey before the draft, right? He was number 1, and then what? Breece Hall, was that kind of the 1-2?
Yeah.
Breece was 2. Goodness, who was 3? It really wasn't. Bijan was probably 3. Some people had Bijan ahead of Breece. And Saquon was like a borderline round 1 pick. I can look up his ADP if you really want me to, guys. I can tell you what it was. But
okay, all right. Hey, look it up. Hold on, Jason. I think Saquon Barkley's average draft position was 8.
That was my number. So I'm going to go 7.
Okay.
I still don't have it yet.
That's okay. We can vamp. We were talking about Bijan Robinson, so let me see if I can come up with a hot take while Dave's looking here. Let me get his stats up for the year. Bijan Robinson, where are you at? There you are. So he has 155 carries this year for 748 yards. Okay. Is Bijan Robinson the running back Kyle Pitts take is not going to work. He's actually better. All right. I filled enough. Do you have it?
I do.
Okay.
In PPR leagues, he was 7.2.
Oh, Jason gets it.
Yeah,
Jason.
close.
Of course, Jason gets it.
Of course, Jason.
He was even higher in non-PPR. He was a top 5 overall pick in non-PPR.
Oh, wow.
That makes sense.
Okay, all right.
Running backs get pushed up.
Okay, all right. Well, very good.
Yeah,
Jason.
So you would still, though, at this point, David, it was 1 game for Christian McCaffrey. I think it was okay. I mean, there was for the first game after being out that long, but going forward, though, you're still very high on CMC.
He's my number 1 running back this week. My number 1 overall player in non-PPR this week. I thought he looked good. I know the rushing average wasn't what you wanted it to be, but holy cow, he played 89% of the snaps. It was pretty much, other than not scoring a touchdown, pretty close to what you were hoping for from McCaffrey on a week in and week out basis, which is 100 total yards, bunch of catches, and obviously the touchdown. We might get that this week against Seattle. Seattle's run defense isn't very good. And it's clear that McCaffrey, there were many examples of him having, trademark burst, explosiveness through the hole, like all those things that helped make him him. And then that big catch and run that he had against Tampa, that was huge too. So I think we go right back to Christian McCaffrey. I can't say that everything's forgiven. It's week 11 and he's just now getting back to his 2nd game, but it does look like a fresh-legged Christian McCaffrey is here to save fantasy managers.
I was having a conversation with this person wasn't in my league, but we were over the weekend just having a rando conversation. He's an Alvin Kamara owner, as am I. We were having a conversation about, is this a time where you look to Alvin Kamara, and if somebody gives you a good offer, if they give you a good offer, you make a trade. But if Alvin Kamara was a stock, he started out gangbusters. He hasn't had a touchdown since October 13th. He did have the 155-yard rushing game against Carolina. But is Kamara to you a sell, hold, or buy guy even?
I don't think he's a buy guy. We know that he's got one thing working against him, which is he's not 100% healthy. Saints aren't going anywhere this year. At what point do the Saints say, you know what? Let's take a look at some of our younger running backs. And since they signed Alvin Kamara to a contract extension, they rest him. So that takes him out of the conversation as being a someone to trade for. If you got a good offer for Alvin Kamara, I would trade him away because, again, on top of him being a little beat up, not finding the end zone, Taysom Hill's back. You know he's going to bogart a touchdown or two between now and the rest of the season. What happens if he just ends up not being as effective as we want him to be? What happens if there's a game that comes along where he doesn't get a bunch of catches? If his rushing efficiency goes down, he's an older running back. What if he gets hurt? So there are a lot of paths for him to kind of fade. And if I've got Kamara and no one's offering me anything for him, yeah, I'll write him out. But I'm going to want to have another running back on my bench just in case the end of the year comes and AK is not okay and he ends up playing.
Dave, how about just one more thing back on the Niners? Pearsall last week, a couple catches, got a touchdown. I mean, it's a great story, but besides the story element, is he factor in anywhere deeper onto a roster, you think?
He absolutely should be on every roster. He was my number one wide receiver to add off waivers back on Tuesday. He was somebody that I just thought was explosive. He does everything that you would want a receiver in that offense to do. Certainly capable of making plays after the catch, tremendous route runner, plays a lot, good hands, and he's clearly a step forward in as he's gone along here. You know, he got off to a slow start, and now he's starting to play significantly better. I don't think his playing time is going to go away, and I think his production might end up taking some numbers away from Debo and from Kittle and from Jawan Jennings even. So I think he belongs on fantasy rosters. Is he a must start in your fantasy league? That's where I might say no, because I think that it's like a bye week guy. Sure, he might get 4 catches for 60 yards. That could be pretty much something he does every week. I don't know, guys, if he's got the upside every week to do what he did against Tampa. Yeah. And it is Tampa. It's one of the easiest matchups that you could ask for. But he's playing Seattle this week. That's another pretty favorable matchup. It's just a matter of how many targets is he legitimately going to get from week after week after week. Is it going to be 6? Is it going to be lower some weeks? We'll see. But for now, absolutely somebody that should be on fantasy rosters.
Dave Richard with us. Is it all hands on or off deck with the Jets? They are fumbling, bumbling, stumbling. But you do have Aaron Rodgers. You have Breece Hall. You have Garrett Wilson. You have players on that team that were drafted rather high in many cases. When you look at what they have remaining in just your general feel, are you an out guy on the Jets, or is there value to be had there grabbing them from someone else?
I think now is the time to grab them from somebody else, because especially in the case of Breece Hall, like there's no way he's this bad of a player. And one of the easiest things the Jets could do is lean on him a little bit more and run the ball a little bit more. It could be tough for them this week. I do buy into the Colts run defense as being good. DeForest Buckner is healthy. He'll play there for him. That makes a world of difference for Indianapolis on that D line. But Garrett Wilson, Devontae Adams, those are basically the only 2 guys getting targets in that offense. I don't think it's really going to change that much, even if/when Allen Lazard comes back. And so in leagues where catches count, those guys are they've got too much going for them to put on the bench. Plus, this week especially, Indianapolis's pass defense isn't overall good. If you've got Devontae Adams, you do have to watch out. He's missed practice for 2 days this week. If he practices on Friday, he should be good to go. If he doesn't, then you've got to be aware of that for lineups when they lock in week 11. But as far as Aaron Rodgers goes, I honestly, and this is, it's easy for me to criticize him because he's an older quarterback. We know that he's not at 100%. He's on the injury report too, but he'll play. But there have been timing issues all season long. First, it was with Garrett Wilson, and then it was with Devontae Adams, and you still kind of see it with both of them as recently as last week. At some point, you have to say, well, it's on the quarterback, and it's the quarterback not getting the ball out fast enough, not reading defenses fast enough, and this is important too. He's not anywhere near as able to move compared to how he was earlier in his career. And when pressure's on him, he can't go anywhere. You know, he's Joe Flacco-esque. And that makes him a liability for fantasy. It takes away passing opportunities. He could fumble when he's sacked. It does make him a problem. I don't want to trust him. I will trust his receivers because I think his receivers still have good upside, and Breece Hall is a good buy low.
Dave, for the week, if we're looking QB, running back, wide receiver, just this may cover the basis for a lot of our listeners. Who do you have maybe ranked higher than normal so people could go, yeah, I maybe should plug them into my lineup?
Brock Purdy is top 5. Joe Burrow is top 5. I think everybody knew to start Joe Burrow anyway, but Justin Herbert's playing against the Bengals in that same game on Sunday night. And Herbert's really been throwing the ball amazing since the bye. It's just a matter of just how much volume will he throw. I think he'll need to throw a decent amount, and I think Cincinnati's a good matchup for him. Audric Estime was a guy that I kind of mentioned on Twitter, like he was a good stash candidate at running back, and he ended up leading the Broncos offense. He's got Atlanta this week. Falcons have a lot of injuries on defense. I could see Estime having a decent game. Not a top 24 running back, but somebody who is certainly ranked higher. He's ranked higher than any other Broncos running back for me. So I think that he's interesting. Some receivers that I've got ranked higher than normal. Juwan Jennings with the 49ers. Cedric Tillman with the Browns. The Chargers receivers. Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston. All those guys are ahead of Drake London for me. I think the matchup is going to be hard for Drake London against the Broncos. They've been great. They've been great against number one wide receivers other than Zay Flowers, but it's really more of like those physical number one receivers, those perimeter guys, especially those that don't move with quickness. And that's certainly what Drake London is one of those guys. And let me give you 2 tight ends. Dawson Knox in Buffalo, Cole Kmet in Chicago. Knox is going to be a plug and play if Dalton Kincaid doesn't play for the Bills in that matchup against Kansas City. Kincaid did not practice on Wednesday or Thursday. If he doesn't practice on Friday, Dawson Knox is a top 10 tight end for me. And Chicago changed offensive coordinators. They're going to try and I don't know how you rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic for that offense. But one thing they could do is ask Caleb Williams to throw shorter passes. And Cole Kmet's been a good short area target for Caleb all season long. I would expect to see Cole Kmet see an uptick in targets this week, a low-end fantasy tight end that I would start ahead of Hunter Henry. I would start him again over Pat Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith. Those types of guys, I would start Cole Kmet over.
That's Dave Richard, CBS Sports, who in the future, it's a little bit of a glare, just so you know, if you could in the future do your interviews with us slid just a little to your right, because behind you, there's something glaring out from over your right shoulder that's really.
What could that be?
I think it's offensive, if I'm being honest. It's a little kind of a bad.
Offend you?
Huh?
I'm sorry, David. Here, I'll just stand right over 2023 Miami Hurricanes Final Four basketball team.
Where can people see, watch, hear you, and all that fun stuff, David?
Well, like the Miami Hurricanes, I'm still somebody that likes to be at the top of my class as far as helping people and making people happy. So you can find me on Twitter and Blue Sky at Dave Richard. And of course, on YouTube, the name of the show is Fantasy Football Today, live every day, helping you with your fantasy football teams. We just recorded our Start Sit Part 2 episode for Week 11, went through half the games on Friday, half the games on Thursday. And then at 10 a.m. on CBS Sports Network. Yeah, you get that channel. Watch me and the rest of the crew on Fantasy Football Today as we go through our favorite starts and sits of the week and also our favorite player props.
Oh, and I appreciate that you always wait until we're off the air to do that. Right at 10.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah. Also,
Or you can watch it.
Yeah, watch it. Happy to do that. I had a question for you. I forget. I'll save it for next week.
Yes.
I guess we got a break anyways. Have a wonderful weekend. Have a fine week 11.
Jason,
and
I don't know how you deal with this guy, but good luck in your fantasy league.
Oh, that's it. Do you think that there's actually a relative of somebody whose job was literally to rearrange deck chairs on the Titanic, and that's like an offensive statement to them? I've never thought about that before, but somebody literally their job was arranging chairs on the Titanic repeatedly, which means rearranging happened. And then that was like Grandpa Louie, and now everybody kind of makes fun of him because his whole job was crap.
I would imagine that job would have gone to a younger person who wasn't able to extend his family at the time of the Titanic sinking.
God,
wow, we got dark.
That's a dark thought, and
Have a
probably
great day,
accurate.
guys.
Hey, take care, Dave. The Dave Richard CBS Sports. I imagine no one's offended because they're not alive because that person never got to procreate.
Yes.
They were too young when they drowned. Back to you.
End of story.
When we come back, we're laughing about the Titanic going down. 3 for Madness. It's a big sports weekend. The Cavs are still undefeated.